Hi everybody. Well, the progress on my Transaxle rebuild, it's taking a little longer than I thought. Having problems with, of course, getting the parts for that, but I have the solution now, at least for that. But before I can put that on there, I have to deal with all the stuff that's in here first. And that's a bit of a pain in the ass, since for whatever reason, the clutch on these cars, Transaxle cars, is just absolutely insanely expensive. It's a better part of $1,000 to get a new clutch kit, and that's like insanity. What do you get with this clutch kit? Well, you get a pressure plate, of course. I don't know what's so special about this pressure plate, but just a regular pull style pressure plate. You get a flywheel, which, admittedly is a little wonky looking and everything, but ultimately it's just a hunk of metal that's being machined. And you got that little piece there and a disc. Nothing special there. And you, of course, for $1,000, well, you better for $1,000 get a release bearing as well. So, obviously, I have to figure out the clutch situation, because this disc is pretty new. It's only got 50,000 K on it, and it's barely worn from when I first measured it. But the little spring in there is broken, so I can never ever put that back into that transmission and sleep at night. I have that disc from my spare transmission. It measures the same thickness as that disc, so ultimately it's 80-85% left on that disc. So ultimately I'll probably put that back together with this assembly when I put it all back in the car. So what do you do, if you want to just slam a new disc into that assembly? Of course, this is a balanced assembly. Make sure you mark everything before you take it apart. Scratch it or whatever you do so that it goes back together in the same orientation of the pressure plate on the flywheel. And that should be fine. Next, you can either have your disc relined. Doesn't cost too much money, or you can buy a new disc. There's a few places you can still get discs in whatever material, organic material or a Kevlar lining, whatever you prefer. Then the next thing you got to do, if I go over the solvent tank here, is deal with your pressure plate. By now, your pressure plate, after you've gone through a disc, is going to be pretty ruined looking. The surfaces on there aren't going to be great. As well, pressure plates typically wear because they just lose their spring over time, and there's nothing really you can do about that, period, other than just buying a new pressure plate. I mean, I've heard you can rebuild pressure plates, but yeah, I don't know. Here's where your knife stone comes in handy again. Just take it and just clean up with circular motions. Just clean up all the crap that's on your friction surface there. There's going to be grooves and ridges, and there's going to be burnt marks and discolorations from heating and cooling. So just take your knife stone and just clean everything off. It takes a while, but you're going to give your disc a nice surface for it to wear into, because the last thing you want is to glaze the clutch surface and end up with just an awful, jittery, just terrible clutch. Clean everything, obviously, really well with brake parts cleaner before you assemble it all. And then do the same to your flywheel. This is kind of halfway done now. I took a grinder and got rid of all the crap that builds up, because on these, usually when you take them apart, there's lots of crap, rust and crap on these. So yeah, take your grinder, get rid of all the crap that's built up on the mounting surfaces, and then as far as the friction surface goes, just scratch the crap out of that too. Try to make it, again, as flat as you possibly can. You could probably take that to a machine shop to have it flattened. Same as the pressure plate, you could probably take that to a machine shop and ask them to flatten it too. They'll have to use a grinder though, and not on a not a lathe, because of the hot spots that build up on these. You're not gonna be able to take those hot spots out properly with the lathe. You need to use a grinder. Having said that, spending money on something that really shouldn't be reused in the first place is kind of a waste. So, that knife stone thing, that will probably do a fairly good job. Until ultimately, these parts will eventually wear to a point where you just can't use them anymore, and you'll be forced to spend, $1,000, or 10 years from now when that wears out again, $2,000 on a new clutch disc. But until then, hopefully this doesn't come back to bite me. Of course, you know, the release bearing on these cars is almost impossible to get as well. I have 2 here on the floor. And, you know, honestly, I don't really want to use either of them, but I don't know why they'd stop making just a release bearing. But it is what it is, so I'm going to figure out which one of those 2 is the best and use that. And hopefully it lasts. They usually do. They're pretty good. So yeah, we'll get that dealt with, and then I can move on to other things in my life. Like shift linkages and power steering racks that leak a crap load of oil.